2822 Now presents Newsmakers with your host, Jane Ann Bugda.
Hello and welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Jane Ann Bugda. I have an interesting topic for you today. We're talking about something that impacts just about everyone, stress. And we're focusing on stress, particularly during the holidays. And I have a great guest. I am joined by Dr. Daniel Benyo. He is the Lehigh Valley Physician Group, Internal Medicine with Lehigh Valley Health Network, part of Jefferson Health. And Dr. Benyo, thank you for joining me today. Talking about stress during the holidays. You know, the season's here, joyous time, but a lot of us are on edge. So I think we're going to need this show.
Yes, thank you for having me. It certainly can feel like a pressure cooker sometimes with the crunch of the holidays on us.
Right. And Dr. Benyo, I want to begin by, first of all, talking a little bit about yourself. Anybody from the Hazleton area is very familiar with the Benyo name. Your dad's a doctor. Your brother's a physician assistant. You come hometown doctor, something we don't hear very often. So, Dr. Benyo, Dr. Daniel Benyo, you tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so born at Hazleton General at the old hospital with the nuns. And so familiar with the area. I then had kind of a serpiginous route to medicine. I initially was at the Votech in Hazleton for construction, and then went to music school in Boston, and then was out in California for a couple of years working in the music industry from the recording aspect side, and then made my way back to Pennsylvania and went to King's College for undergrad, and then medical school at the Commonwealth Medical College, which is now the Geisinger School of Medicine, and then residency in Hershey. So kind of stayed in Pennsylvania for most of my medical training.
So, and we're glad you're here today joining us. What we brought you here for today is to talk about stress, especially during the holiday season, but I think we need a definition. So how do you define stress?
Yeah, sometimes people have challenges with defining stress, anxiety, burnout. It can all kind of feel like the same type of thing. A really big picture view is when stress happens, it feels as though something is bigger than what our capacity is. And so it's that imbalance. It's that perception that it's overwhelming. And so that's kind of the biggest concept with stress, whether or not, and most of the time it's perceived to be bigger. Something is perceived to be bigger than what our capacity is, or our perceived capacity. And that's kind of the general big picture approach to stress.
And are there some signs and symptoms we should be looking for in our daily life?
Sure. When we talk about signs, symptoms, signs would be more physical manifestations, something that's observable. So I can observe someone who may be having stress with a elevated heart rate, with an elevated blood pressure, someone who may be restless, difficulty focusing when I'm asking them questions, may appear more withdrawn and less active. They might have weight loss or weight gain when struggling with stress. And some of the symptoms would be more difficult to observe, but are internally kind of felt. So someone may feel withdrawn. Someone may feel restless but not manifested. Someone may feel somewhat isolated. Depression comes with that as well. Some people have this hypervigilance where they try to kind of accomplish everything at once, and they're in this fight or flight mode. And that's typically how you kind of look at those signs and symptoms of stress.
And, you know, we talk about daily stress. So, you know, when we're, you know, you're going through your day to day, what are some of the daily causes of stress for just anybody out there just watching?
Sure. Financial is a big one. And that, it seems as the years go by, it becomes ever so present. sometimes we feel as though we bite off more than we can chew from a work standpoint or from a finance standpoint. There's certainly stressors with family, good and bad. Can be stresses related to our own health. So maybe our health and maybe life isn't kind of going the way we planned it over the last several decades, and we're not able to accomplish what we thought we could accomplish. Maybe we have to work more than we thought we did. Maybe stresses related to family members, their health is declining. So certainly there's a lot that can lead to stress. And certainly there are ways to deal with that.
And we talk about stress, it's a day-to-day thing. It's not everybody, it kind of impacts everybody, maybe some people a little bit, some people a lot. But when you see around this time of year, in your practice, are you seeing more people that come in and say, doctor, I'm feeling stressed out and I don't really feel it this, normally around other times of the year, but I'm really feeling it now during this holiday season?
Oh, certainly. And there's a lot of factors that can play a role for that. Not only the holiday stress that patients will start to talk about and that we're seeing in the office, that comes with what we said with financial stress. It's kind of like a multiplier for it. Comes with the stress of interacting with other family members who they may not be the best to interact with, or hosting activities which they may not be used to and are only doing kind of seasonally. There's also stresses associated with family members who may not be present, who we used to celebrate with, and they're no longer with us. And it reminds us about a time of being with family, and our family is shrinking to a certain degree. And so we have this kind of sense of mortality that causes further stress when we kind of think about it more.
I think that you touched upon something there that I think sometimes people don't think about. When you do lose a loved one, and whether it is during the holiday season or before the holiday season, sometimes those first holidays can really be an emotional roller coaster, compounding with your day to day.
Oh, certainly. And it's that first year of losing a loved one. You never really get over it, but it starts to sting less as the years go by. But that first year is a challenge. You're dealing with anniversaries, birthdays, holidays, and certain activities that took around the holidays. And so it is a challenge. And you could look to the holidays as being something that can remind you of what's missing, or you can look at the holidays, as some people do, as some of my patients do, as something that is to be thankful for what family you have left or who's around with you.
That's probably a healthy way to think about it. Who's with you, who's around you, celebrating, their life and your life with happy
Yeah.
memories.
Oh,
What?
definitely.
How about when it comes to holiday travel? A lot of people think, oh no, I have to go visit, I have to do this, I have to go to another state. That
Mhm.
that seems to add a layer of stress.
Oh, flying is not easy anymore. And that can be a challenge. Some people have a fear of flying. Some people have a fear of being a passenger in a car. I had some patient who is traveling for the holidays to Oregon, and so they're driving out there.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
their husband usually likes to drive, and so they don't like being a passenger. And so that's a very long trip in the passenger side. And you're in a different environment. You're kind of not at your place. And if you have some medical conditions, that can be a challenge to manage when you're not in a comfortable, stable environment, such as home. And so that kind of brings in further stresses about how am I going to manage maybe some GI issues? How am I going to manage my diet? And do I bring all my pills? And so that can add another layer of this idea of something feels bigger than the capacity that I have to deal with it.
Some people get stressed out about what are we going to talk about during the dinner, the Christmas dinner or the Hanukkah dinner or the when we're sitting there Christmas Eve. Sometimes the conversation can be stressful.
Oh yeah, and that can be a hot topic for people. People try to avoid these, political discussions, as things can be very charged politically, socially, and maybe different points of view are sitting at the table. And I think the challenge is when we have this mismatch of expectations. If you're hosting something and you conceive like, oh, this dinner is going to be perfect and family members are going to get along and the photos are going to be great and the kids are going to act great, even though they've never acted great at dinner time. So we have these unrealistic expectations where I think this idea of trying to steer or manufacture a gathering, I think a lot of times you just be happy about being in the presence of each other and having that kind of commodity that is priceless, being time, and being able to share your time and share other time together.
Let me ask this question. Do men handle stress differently than women?
Certainly, I'm sure my wife would say so. I think the idea is when we look at men and women is hormonally. So men, of course, have maybe elevated levels of testosterone compared to women. Women have elevated levels of estrogen. And so testosterone can run into this fight or flight kind of mode where a man maybe wants to, he'll get more anxious and irritable and maybe more aggressive in certain unhealthy cases, or have this idea of fixing it. Whereas women can more be of tend and befriend, where they develop more social relationships during stressful times. They'll start to reach out to individuals to have more conversations. They'll start to work on their relationships to have kind of a social connection. And you can see that a lot during the aging process outside of kind of the stress discussion. And men become more kind of solitude, and, they have very small group of friends, if any, for some cases. And women tend to do well. They thrive in social situations. And so you can kind of see, in certain couples where the husband says, oh, all my wife does is she's just talking to her friends. And the wife's saying, well, all he does is just kind of stay in his garage or something. And we just kind of deal with our stress differently, and understanding that may be how someone copes is okay.
And, we're talking about stress, but when we think about sometimes children and teens, stressful this time of year, what should we be looking for parents looking for in their child or their teen?
Yeah, this could be a whole different topic in and of itself in terms of how teens and kids utilize social media, how they interact with the world, their family. And I think it can be somewhat of a complex interaction. The big picture is, less kind of technology, less social media tends to lead to better outcomes in terms of children's mental health. And so having them be social, instead of playing a video game in their bedroom, maybe just being downstairs with the family watching TV, if you're not, playing a board game or something like that, and to be more inclusive and keep them in with the family unit and keep those communication lines open to talking. And teens can be very body aware. They will be constantly looking at social media and telling them what maybe they should look like, or how they should do this or do that. And it can cause a lot of issues with self-perception, confidence. And so you can start to see teens being a little bit more withdrawn, maybe being a little bit more restrictive with their eating habits, maybe voicing some ideology that seems to be a little bit more on the fringe. And so I think having those conversations, and always, open door policy, so to speak, can kind of thwart that to a certain degree.
Well, Doctor, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to continue our conversation on stress. You can find information on today's show on 2822news.com or under the Newsmakers link. I'm Jane Ann Bugda. You're watching Newsmakers, and we'll be back right after this.
2822 Now presents Newsmakers with your host, Jane Ann Bugda. 2822 Now presents Newsmakers with your host, Jane Ann Bugda.
Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Jane Ann Bugda, and I have an appointment today with Dr. Daniel Benyo. He is a physician with the Lehigh Valley Physician Group, Internal Medicine, Lehigh Valley Health Network, part of Jefferson Health. And Dr. Benyo and I are talking about stress, particularly during the holidays. We talked about a lot of the causes of stress and, how the differences of stress and what you should be looking for in your children. But, as we're talking about stress, so how do we begin coping? How do we begin, Dr. Benyo, coping with the stress that we have every day, and especially, particularly during the holidays?
Sure. I think there's healthy habits, healthy coping mechanisms, and unhealthy coping mechanisms. I think the unhealthy coping mechanisms can be obvious for some. We start to imbibe a little bit more with alcohol use. We start to maybe smoke a little more. We start to maybe eat a little more. We start to maybe withdraw a little bit and have maybe self-deprecative language that we use around people. Traditionally, healthy coping habits, strategies would be use of exercise, release of physical stress, and becoming a little bit more social. Some people donate their time in terms of volunteering for a clinic or a food clinic or food drive, a food pantry. I think a big part of coping healthy and something that we were taught in medical school, and I don't see the general public do it as much, as kind of self-reflection, taking time, which is very difficult commodity to obtain more of, but to use your time and to use that time at whatever part of the day to kind of self-reflect and think about, what was good, what was bad, how could my thoughts, my anxieties, what's driving them, what's driving that bus, and how can I kind of manage that a little bit more. And those are the type of things that you can look at to kind of help drive you through a little bit of those stressors that happen during the holiday season.
I think sometimes we tend to dwell on the day so much that sometimes it just kind of takes away from everything and takes away maybe from the joy of the season.
Oh,
And
certainly.
worried about keeping up with everyone and, making a good impression.
Yeah, we get a lot of, the phrase is comparison is the thief of joy. We always hear that a lot. That can go both ways, but I think the idea of expectations, of these maybe perceived expectations that may not be realistic. It doesn't mean we settle for less or lower a standard, but it's coming in line with what is truly reality. And again, the idea of like having children at a Christmas dinner who don't really sit down for dinner at all throughout the year and expect them to be quiet and eat all their food and, not have really good table manners or something, is not an appropriate expectation. And so I think having kind of a realistic expectations in terms of interactions during the holidays doesn't set you up for this mismatch between what your brain expects and what actually happens. It kind of levels the playing field.
And maybe sometimes we're just a little too hard on ourselves. Sometimes, I'm guilty of that myself. I'm sure we're all guilty of that. If you feel the stress is getting just too much and that you feel that you're out of control, how should you approach your physician? What should you say to them?
So certainly, yes. I think you just alluded to it, is contact your healthcare provider. And certainly there may be steps that you do before then. You talk to a family member. You maybe go to church or reach out to someone within your clergy. And then ultimately maybe contacting your healthcare provider to kind of discuss, is there a role for medication? Is there maybe something else going on? Is something related to my blood work off, or am I having an issue? And they can help review kind of what the scenario is. Are there any somewhat red flags that could be happening underneath the surface? Are there any habits developing that may not be very healthy that need to be addressed? And then potentially, if it is affecting kind of your quality of life, use of as needed and or maintenance medication.
Hmm. What does stress do to the body and the mind?
Sure. So if you, the whole purpose I tell patients, the purpose of my job is to make you live longer, whether you like it or not. And to do that, that's a different discussion when we're young versus when we have a little less
Mm.
runway left. And part of that is improving quality of life, and lowering risk. And stress can cause further wear and tear on the body. It can cause your blood sugar to go up through cortisol secretion, can cause your heart rate to go up, which can put further stress on your heart, can cause your blood pressure to go up, which puts stress on all your organs. And so it can have a whole host of things, can impact your sleep, which if you look at
Mm.
actuarial data in terms of lifespan, sleep is a big proponent or component of living a long, healthy life. And so it really ties everything together. And so stress is like the silent killer. It's like blood pressure. It's something that we kind of have to keep our pulse on.
And if I see or somebody sees their loved one, a husband, a child, how do you approach them? Or someone who's alone and you say they might be a little stressful this time. How do you approach them? What do you say to them?
Yeah, I think from what we talked about earlier of how men deal with certain stress and women deal with stress, and leaning on that, sometimes people want to just fix a problem. Oh, you have a problem, I want to fix it. And
Hmm.
somewhat of the assumption some people have would be, well, I don't think I'm a problem. Why are you trying to fix me? And so people aren't necessarily looking for a fix. They're looking for you to open up the door. They're looking for safety, not solutions. They're looking for you to just have an open discussion. So sometimes that discussion is more of a sense of, hey, it looks like you got a lot of things on your plate. How are things going? And so that kind of opens up the door to allow them to kind of talk about everything, and allows for an ongoing discussion. Sometimes that's therapeutic to some people of just talking about
Talking
it.
to someone, yeah.
Mhm. So
Um,
I think play
oh,
a
I'm sorry.
role.
Go ahead.
And I think that's the big picture of communicating with someone with stress, is allowing them to just kind of vent a little bit and kind of try to help yourself from trying to quote unquote fix it.
We don't just say Happy New Year, pop the cork, cheers, and stress goes away. How long can stress kind of stay with you after the holidays?
Sure, sometimes as long as the credit card debt's there,
Oh,
it can linger on, and that's the challenge. Is the For some individuals, stress can have this varying kind of oscillating part, and the holidays kind of kicks up that oscillator a little bit higher. And so as the um, holidays go through, it's like throwing a big rock in the water. Those waves take time to dissipate. And so uh, some people, what would be unhealthy is that you don't return back to a normal baseline or your normal baseline. And that stress, that acceleration of thoughts is persistent. And that's where you probably need to talk to your healthcare provider to kind of figure out a game plan to go about treating it.
right. So people shouldn't think, okay, I was just this now, and then maybe come January 1st, I'm okay. It's good to just be in touch with your body and how you're feeling. And then, as you said, talk to a doctor about it.
Oh,
Um,
certainly. And I think sometimes the holidays bring use of alcohol more and eating more. And so then that can linger into the new year a little bit longer and have those persistent effects.
Well, I know we have a link that I have that the doctors at Lehigh Valley, a part of Jefferson Health, have put together some interesting thoughts. I'll have that linked up to our website. I do want to ask you this. We have about 2 minutes left. Is there such thing as good stress?
I think there is. I think when we talk about stress, you talk about from a kind of a more big picture, stressing a foundation to see if it can hold up, stressing your financial portfolio to see if that could hold up over the years. And I think exercise is a great form of stress to a point where you're not feeling as though it's insurmountable. And so it's that idea of, is this is this bigger than my capacity that I could handle? And so I think when you start to utilize good stress, trying to accomplish tasks and not trying to overextend yourself, certainly you can see a lot of good come out of that.
And Dr. Daniel Benyo, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I have information on today's show on 2822news.com. I'm under the Newsmakers link. Dr. Dan, thank you, Benyo. Thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate all your insight and your thoughts, and I hope you have a blessed and unstressful holiday season.
You too. Thank you very much.
And you're watching Newsmakers. I'm Jane Ann Bugda. Thanks to my team behind the scenes who helped put this show together, and Joey Nardone, who's on the board. Again, you're watching Newsmakers. I'm Jane Ann Bugda. Thank you for making Newsmakers part of your day, and we'll talk again next time.
2822 Now presents Newsmakers with your host, Jane Ann Bugda.